All right, welcome everyone to this live training for Citizens Climate Lobby University. Tonight, as you can see, the program, hopefully you see it on your screen, is Growing Your Group. And we have the wonderful Ellie Sparks and fabulous Don Addu, who is a regional coordinator for the Southeast Sweethearts, on tonight to facilitate the lesson. Just a couple of housekeeping notes, and then I'll turn it over to them. I am recording the call right now, so this lesson will be uploaded to community tomorrow. So if you have other group leaders or other people that you want to see this lesson, you'll be able to do that sometime tomorrow. Also, if you want to ask questions, and we'll take questions at the end, you can mute and unmute yourself by *1 on your phone. And if you're online, you should be able to see a little microphone icon next to your name or somewhere in your box. If you can just click and unclick on that, you'll see a red line going through. It means you're muted. During the call, if you would, just make sure that you are muted until you're ready to ask a question. If there are any type of tech problems, two of the things that are easiest to do to solve those tech problems is to make sure you close all programs that are running on your computer while you're actually using Fuse. Of course, don't close your browser if you've joined us online. And then also, if it's a little spotty, just close out and come back in, and that usually seems to remedy the problem as well. All right, so I am going to go ahead and turn it over to the wonderful Ellie Sparks. Go ahead, Ellie.
Awesome. Thank you, Ricky. All righty. So our agenda tonight, we're going to cover three things: recruiting volunteers and then putting them to work. And these two things go hand to hand. Once you get your volunteers, you want to put them to work. And I want to start off providing a little context and framing. So if you'll click to the next slide with that beautiful picture of Marshall and those flowers, I want to remind us of our two-part mission: to build the political will for a livable world, and to empower people to have breakthroughs in personal and political power. And I think about this mission a lot. Every Wednesday I do the introductory call, and I introduce the mission to the people on the introductory call. And I really love sharing that, especially the second part of the mission. And I think all of you on this call tonight and listening to the recording are here because you are ready for your next breakthrough, and you are ready to learn what it takes to grow your group, to challenge yourself to do some outreach that you might have not done before. And so you are here tonight for that delicious breakthrough. And the wonderful thing about breakthroughs is once you have them, then it's kind of like a pebble tossed out onto a lake. It ripples out. And so your breakthrough that you'll be working on tonight and then working on actively back in your community is going to ripple out and bring more other people in for their breakthroughs. And that's just so exquisite. So I wanted to celebrate that part of our mission and point that out to all of us tonight as we move forward. So if you'll click to the next slide for me, then I am proposing the idea that actually running your group is a little bit like maybe leading a preschool classroom or running a small business. And I got this is not something I invented myself. Actually, some of our best group leaders with large active groups, I've asked them to tell me a little bit about what it's like to run their groups. And one person in particular, Madeline, our program director, when she describes how she runs her group, I think to myself, well, that must be how she used to run her preschool classroom. She was a preschool teacher. And she is always making sure that her members are welcomed. New people are welcomed at the front door. She spends more time with the new people at their first meeting. She brings them in and gets them involved right away, just like a preschool teacher would sit a child down at that activity center, a Lego table, for example, and then bring the second child over to sit next to that first child. And then the next two kids would go over to the Play-Doh table. A preschool teacher does not sit down in the middle of the classroom playing with all of the toys by herself. Her job is making sure that the children are engaged and having fun. Now, I've also talked to people who describe that the way they run the group is kind of like running a small business. And it's Don Addu who actually taught me that, and we're going to hear from Don shortly. The way he describes how he recruits people for his group and how he engages them, it really sounds to me like it's running a small business. You know, in a small business, you're looking for employees who love selling your service and really like putting the whole package together for your small business. They wear many hats. They want to get the job done. They bring their skills and talents to the table, and they're all working towards a common goal. And in a small business, everyone's contributions make a big difference for a small company. So I just share those two ideas for you as you're thinking about your group. If you'll click to the next slide for me. So I want to introduce Don, and I'm going to tell you his story. When Don discovered Citizens Climate Lobby, he jumped right in, ready to roll with the group, sent out his emails for his weekly or his monthly meetings, and would clean his apartment and prepare his food and wait by the door, and no one would show up. For an entire year, Don was a group of one there in Raleigh, Durham. And everyone would call in on that Saturday call. This is Madison, Wisconsin with 26 people. This is Portland, Oregon with 19. This is Don Addu in Raleigh, Durham with 1. And he was so close to throwing in the towel at the end of those 12 months. But some fella came to 2 meetings in a row, and Don thought to himself, if that guy can come to 2 meetings in a row, I have got to figure out how to make this group work. And so Don set about figuring out how to do outreach, how to engage his volunteers and put them to work. And within 2 months, Don had a group of 12 active volunteers. Within 2 months. So there was something magical Don was doing. And when I found out about his growth, his group's growth over those 2 months, I asked him to tell me how he managed to make that happen. And he told me, and I thought it was brilliant, wise information. And so it's Don who is going to carry the rest of this talk tonight, because really he has some great tips and techniques and wisdom. And so I'm going to turn it on over to Don for the rest of the talk tonight. So Don.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ellie. I really appreciate it. What a wonderful introduction, and especially for the group leaders who are on the call, who you have a small group or just getting started. I definitely understand where you're coming from, and it can be a challenge getting up and running, and sometimes it feels absolutely daunting. How in the world am I going to get anybody to come to my meetings or help me meet with a member of Congress? And it's really a challenge. And so the way I approached getting more people involved and actually finding that sweet combination that builds a group is through a few different steps in outreach, and specifically events, organizations using MeetUp, and one-on-one interaction. So those are what I want to go through today with you. So let's start with specifically events. When you're looking at events, what do you want to find in an event that says, hey, this is going to be a great place for me to meet volunteers? Well, environmental groups and environmental events are really a great place to start. Earth Day and April, we're still a few months from April, but not too early to start planning, and especially during the beginning of the year is when a lot of festivals around Earth Day start looking for sponsors and looking for vendors to come out and be a part of the festivities. So now and into January is really when you're going to want to start doing this. Municipalities are very active in Earth Day, along with your local cities, and universities are a great opportunity for you. So when you go to table an event, let's say we're going to do a festival, and one of the most successful festivals I found in my area is a festival for one of our local rivers called the Eno River Festival. So when you go to a festival event, ideally you want to have at least 2 people at the table at any one time. So let's start with the makeup of the table. So if you've got just a plain table and all you've got is a couple of sheets of paper, well, there's not a whole lot that's going to draw people to your table. So you want to make it colorful. You want to have, we use some really fantastic tapestries that we put over the table. We've got a CCL banner that really brings people in and gets people thinking that says, hey, because our banner says Citizens Climate Lobby, a carbon tax to cure our climate ails. And so that a carbon tax is still it's a provocative term. It's like, well, what is a carbon tax? How would that work? So it brings people into the table. It brings people into the discussion. And so what we really want to do is bring people in, start talking with them, get them engaged. And you want to when you get engaged on this topic, and when you're talking with people about this topic, you want to look like you're excited about it. You know, if you've got two volunteers sitting down at a table and they're both sitting there just kind of hanging out, well, it doesn't really show a whole lot of enthusiasm. And this is a topic that you can really get excited about. I mean, I think we all have a little bit of bias here because this is obviously what we think is the best solution to address climate change. So impart that energy onto the people coming to your table who want to learn and want to address climate change in a real and meaningful way. So, you know, we've got. I really like the picture here with the woman dressed very professionally. You want to look like you know what you're talking about. You want to be there. You want to have your clipboard ready to have people signed up, and take that energy to your prospective volunteers. And remember that every single person that walks by is a potential volunteer. Every one of them. Doesn't matter what they look like. If somebody walks by and you think, oh man, I'll bet that guy completely disagrees with climate change and no way sees it as a real problem, then I see that as a fantastic volunteer. If we can bring somebody on board who's kind of skeptical about climate change, well, that's great. They're going to give us a perspective as to where that side of the debate is coming from. And the more we hear from that side and the more we're able to connect with people like that, the more powerful our message is and the broader our coalition is, which is really our ultimate goal. When you're at festivals, where are a lot of people standing? Usually a lot of people are standing in line to use the restroom. I mean, porta potties tend to line up pretty quickly. If you've got a clipboard in hand and a few extra minutes, go run down the line and talk about CCL. And you say, hey, have you heard about a carbon tax? Are you familiar with CCL? No, well, these people are just kind of hanging out and they're looking for something to do, something to pass the time while they're waiting to get into the porta john. So use that time as a way to make that happen. Protests and marches are also a great way for us to engage people on the issue. The climate march in New York City this past year was really a great opportunity for us. But there's all types of marches and protests that go on about a multitude of different environmental issues, including water use. It's a big deal on the West Coast right now. In North Carolina specifically, fracking is a huge deal, as it is in a lot of other states. So use those as an opportunity to engage people on this issue. This is where you're going to find people who are going to tend to be more aware of what's going on and want to make a difference. That being the case, I also want to encourage you to think outside the box when it comes to recruitment. Again, our ultimate goal is a broad coalition. So one of the events we tabled this year for the first time was the Latino Festival in Durham, and I wouldn't have thought of the Latino Festival for many years as being an opportunity for us. But we went out there. There turned out to be a few thousand people that came out, and we got our name out there into the Latino community. Now, in that particular instance, we didn't get a volunteer. We didn't end up getting a volunteer from the contacts that we accumulated. But that's okay, because what we did was we got our name out there. We got Citizens Climate Lobby out there. We got the idea of a carbon tax into a new community. And one of the most exciting things I found is when I first started with CCL, I'd go to these events and people would come up to the table and I'd say, hey, have you ever heard of the Citizens Climate Lobby before? And look at me and say, no, I've never heard of the Citizens Climate Lobby. Well, now when I go to festivals, more and more I say, have you ever heard of the Citizens Climate Lobby or carbon tax before? And now I'm getting, yes, yeah, I have heard of your organization. I'm a little familiar with it. Tell me more. And that's all due to the work that we've been doing across the country to emphasize the importance of this legislation. And the more we do it, the easier it gets. All right, let's move on to the next slide here. All right, so organizations are a great opportunity for us. So we talked a lot about during festivals looking at environmental organizations. We can do the same thing to do presentations. This Sierra Club is a great opportunity for us. The League of Women Voters is usually a great opportunity. 350.org, they are my favorite volunteers because they are really interested in climate. They see it as a major issue. They want to make a difference, but 350 doesn't really provide the type of infrastructure that CCL does, where 350.org has been talking a lot about divestment, which is important, and I think it's a great idea. But if the majority of Americans don't own large amounts of stock in oil companies. So while they can go to a march or write a letter to as an alumni of a university requesting them to divest from fossil fuels, they run out of things to do pretty quickly. And this is great for us because we have an opportunity to step in and say, hey, I've got stuff for you to do every month where you can make a difference. We've got actions for you to do. We've got roles for you to fill, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Faith-based organizations are fantastic. Usually, the more progressive faiths like Unitarian Universalists are going to be an easier audience and a good place to start. But don't forego even the most conservative churches. There is an amazing amount of respect for creation in the faith community. It's really incredible, and I was amazed at the amount of very, very deeply religious individuals who care an extraordinary amount about the environment and the degradation that we've done to it. And in their view, this is God's creation that we have just neglected and outright destroyed, which resonates very, very strongly with a lot of these individuals. And so, here's an opportunity for us to build what really is the sleeping giant of the faith organizations. They have great infrastructure, they have huge membership, and great respect in the political community. So the more we bring on these type of organizations and the more we're able to bring on these volunteers, the more we're able to connect with those conservative members of Congress who share their faith. And while they may not share their view on climate change, they certainly will be more apt to listen to that type of volunteer and that type of liaison than somebody they might consider just a crunchy hippie. So let's move on to the next slide. So MeetUp is also a great tool. I originally got involved with CCL through MeetUp. And I like MeetUp because it gives you an opportunity to kind of customize what you're looking for and what type of volunteer work you want to do. So it kind of pre-screens all your volunteers for you, which is great. And I remember when I put in my criteria and what I was looking for, I got two matches. One was the Citizens Climate Lobby, and the other was a local Rails to Trails organization. So I reached out to both organizations, and the Citizens Climate Lobby got back to me, which really is 90% of our job. Whenever you have an opportunity to follow up with somebody, follow up with somebody. If you don't follow up, you never get a volunteer. And that was one of the things that it took me a long time to understand and a long time to really realize that, hey, if I don't follow up and I'm not pushing these people forward, pushing my volunteers and showing them that I really want them there, then they're not going to come to my meetings. They're not going to become involved. There's so many things that are vying for our time. I mean, it's incredible. You can just look at Facebook. My goodness. So with all the distractions that go on, plus everything that happens in people's lives, sometimes your intentions are going to fall off the map. Where you sign up at a festival, or you sign up through MeetUp, and you kind of, yeah, I would like to get involved, but if you're not persistent in following up with that individual, then it's not going to happen. And I'm not saying that you have to, send an email every day to people who gave them your email address over at a festival, but you want to send out an email, you want to send it timely, which is also a very, very important thing. If you wait several days before you send out those emails, people lose interest. But if you have a conversation with somebody while at a tabling event, and then that night or the next day, they get an email from you, well, everything's still fresh in their mind. And that energy is going to carry over and help encourage them to get back to or get involved with your group. Let's go to the next slide. So the one-on-one is my favorite way to work with people. I love it when I get that email from the individual who either attended an outreach event or attended a presentation or emails us just out of the blue from our website for your CCL group. This is my favorite part, is when I get to set up a time to specifically meet with somebody. Now, a phone call is great. I will always offer the opportunity to set up a phone call with somebody who's interested. But what I really want to do is set up a meeting. So when you're following up with individuals from, let's say, a tabling event, let's say you have 200 people that gave you their email address or their phone number, and you're writing out an email to them saying, thank you so much for talking with me about the Citizens Climate Lobby. I really appreciate your interest. I would love to set up a meeting with you on Monday, December 27th at 7 p.m. Make it specific. If you say, I would love to get together with you sometime, well, sometime, and sometime never comes. So make it specific, and you can give yourself a window of a few hours, even when you're emailing dozens and dozens and dozens of people, because chances are the majority of the people are not going to get back to you. So as long as you give yourself a 3 or 4 hour window, say from 6 to 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, then you can send out to everyone saying, would you be interested in meeting me at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night? Well, then if you get 3 people max that say, yes, I would love to do that, then you can do one person at 6. You can say, okay, well, I actually have another meeting at 6, but I'd be happy to meet with you at 7. So have that backup. So be prepared to kind of provide yourself a window that's large enough to accommodate the people that are going to respond back to you. And it's very important not to prejudge anyone. Some of our best volunteers are people who kind of come too far from the left and too far from the right. One of my favorite volunteers, when I first met him, he was militant about the Republican Party. He felt they were absolutely the most destructive force on the planet. And of course, that's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do for our organization. We want to build trust and we want to build quality relationships, especially with Republicans. So here's where your work as a group leader comes into play. Obviously, this is not a type of person that you want to put directly into a meeting with a member of Congress, but there's great potential here because there's so much energy. So invite them to the meeting and give them step-by-step how we can actually engage with Republicans and how they are not the enemy the way that it can be seen, that really they're actually our allies. And so over time and with diligence, you can turn those far left wing people into really solid volunteers that write some of the most incredible letters that I've ever seen. And the same thing on the right side. We did a fantastic tabling event during the Republican runoff back in May of this year. And we got a lot of Republicans to sign up with us. And so one of the things that we hear all the time is, oh, climate change isn't real. Okay, well, that's fine. If you don't believe that climate change is real, there's probably a reason behind it. And that's what we really want to get to. So we want to ask. Asking and talking to people, that's where our real power lies, because no one just thinks, oh, well, climate change is false, and nobody thinks that the government is completely useless. There's a reason they think that. So we want to drill down to that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we do that in just a second. Let me move on to the next slide. So when you're looking at volunteers, how do you engage people on the issue of climate change? Well, climate change is it's one of those inflammatory terms because of all the politically charged issues behind it. So the great thing about that is everyone has an opinion about it. So that's what we want. That's what we want to get to. That's the meat and potatoes. We want to know what is that person thinking? What is their opinion on it? Because that's going to give you the starting point. It's just like meeting with a representative or a member of Congress. We want to hear them talk. We want to know what door they want to open. What aspect of climate change do they want to talk about? Because if that's what they want to talk about, that's great, because now we have an engaged audience, which is really what we're after. So next slide, please. No? Maybe? Hey, all right. So one of the ways I like to engage people on climate change is I like to do it. I like to do it slowly, and the way I do it is I'll say, what are you up to this weekend? And I'll say, I'll hear, oh well, I'm taking the kids to the park. It should be a nice weekend. I'm looking forward to it. And then they say, well, what are you doing for the weekend? Oh well, I'm having some volunteers over for an organization I do work for. And so now I've left it wide open. I haven't talked about climate change yet. So now I give the person I'm talking to an opportunity to follow up. If they don't say anything, then they don't care, and great. I can move on, and we're not gonna spin my wheels trying to talk to somebody who's really not interested. If they say, oh, well, what kind of volunteer group? Then I get to say the magic words of, well, we're working to address climate change. And I don't lead with a carbon tax. And the reason I don't lead with a carbon tax is because it's got the word tax in it. And I don't want to talk about taxes. I want to talk about climate change. So I say, well, I'm leading a group that's working to address climate change. And then I get the answer. And then I say, oh, yeah, well, climate change is a real issue, and I think we need to be doing something to solve it. Fantastic. Well, I've got the group for you. Sometimes the answer is, well, yeah, climate change is definitely an issue, but it's not like we can get anything done in Congress. Okay, so great. So now I know it's not climate change that's the issue. It's the lack of faith in government. So let's address the lack of faith in government. And you can talk about how to build your political will. And it goes back to what Elli was saying earlier about the importance of building that personal political empowerment, finding that strength and that joy inside of people that you get when you are actually making a difference and actually meeting and talking with your representative and their staff. And the transformation is really incredible. So share your personal story. If they say, well, there's nothing that can be done in government, I know every single person on this call has had an opportunity to see a change that they've enacted through the CCL method. And maybe it's just a representative who, when they came into office, believed that climate change was completely false. And maybe now they still do, but because of your work, you see that they care more about renewable energy. That's a great step in the right direction. Make the story personal, because every single one of us has seen that change in some way. But the most important thing is really to be listening. What are they telling you? And what they're telling you is your door. So be ready to walk through whatever door they want to open. All right, next slide. Okay. So how do we solve the climate crisis? Well, we want Congress to pass a fee and dividend. So I love this slide. This is one of my favorite pictures, where with the donkey and the elephant just pulling at each other, but nobody's going anywhere. And that's really what we've seen over the last several years, and especially throughout the recession, was a Congress completely deadlocked. Well, Congress deadlocks when there's no consensus. And our primary goal is to build that consensus. And we don't get that consensus if we're not talking with our representatives. One of the most basic points of democracy is the engagement of citizens with their democracy. There are over 2,000 paid lobbyists for energy and environmental issues alone on Capitol Hill. That's incredible. I mean, we're talking 4 lobbyists for every member in the House of Representatives. And these are all paid lobbyists. So if we're talking just about the amount of money that's being spent, or just about the industry influence in Washington, we don't have a chance. But the great thing is they don't get to vote, and we do. And ultimately, the vote is what matters. And so many people have lost faith in that vote, lost faith in that participation, that we continually to see this downslide. And it's really a self-perpetuating loop. The less people feel their voice matters, the less they voice their opinion, and then the less it matters more. And what we're doing is reversing that trend. And we're doing it in a respectful and responsible way. Next slide. So it's great to have the opportunity to really connect with people and be able to say, well, you know, I felt exactly the same way. And I know I did before I got involved with CCL. I thought, you know, there's no way that anything I do or any time I meet with a representative that it would matter at all. I have no money. I'm not. I can't give any money to these representatives, and that's really all they care about. But that is exactly the opposite of the truth. What I have never met a representative on either side of the aisle who was not, well, I don't believe fully, was doing the best they possibly could for their constituency. And they were voting for their constituency, whether it was for their industry who employs their constituency or because they thought that this was the best policy for the people who put them in office. They have the people's best interests in their heart, and that's what they believe. So our goal is to show them why addressing climate change, specifically through a fee and dividend, is best for their constituency. So, next. So now one of the biggest challenges is you've got these wonderful volunteers that come to your meetings, but how do you really get the most out of your volunteers? There are 100 different things that we need to do as an organization, and you as a group leader. Delegation is essential. You can't solve this problem on your own. I know all of us would like to. It would be fantastic. But you've got to utilize the resources that you've built. All this energy that you've put into reaching out to organizations, these presentations, building your group size, now you have a nice group of 12 solid committed members. Okay, well now they need something to do. So the best thing to do is to make sure that everybody helps and everybody has a task. Now, if you're, I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but I know when I started, I would say I'd have a living room full of people, and I would say, okay, who wants to come out and volunteer to meet with the editorial board at our meeting next month? Crickets. A whole bunch of nothing. But if I say, hey, Joe, would you like to come and be a part of an editorial board meeting on December 12th? Then Joe says, yeah, sure, that'd be great. I'd love to do that. Then you're good to go. If Joe says, no, I can't make it that day, that's fine. You go right down the line and say, well, Susan, how about you? Can you make it? Yeah, I can definitely make it. Great. Be specific. Be direct. Next slide, please. So getting people involved requires more than an email. And I know in the digital world, it's very, very tempting to just rely on email. But like so many other things, when everybody relies on email, it makes a phone call stand out. The same reason we write handwritten letters to our members of Congress is because they stand out. And that's why you want to call your group members. An email is easily lost. An email is easily overlooked. An email easily makes it into the trash or spam folder. A phone call doesn't, even if it means just leaving a voicemail. And just following up with your group members and saying, hey, can you make it out to our meeting this Saturday? And usually they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say no. And if they say no, again, we want to follow up. And we can't just let it say no. Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll catch you next month. If you say maybe we'll catch you next month, you won't catch that person next month. What you want to do is say, okay, that's fine. Would you be available to grab a cup of coffee with me the Wednesday after? Yeah, I can definitely do that. I'm free at 6 o'clock. Perfect. So now you have an opportunity to meet up with a member who wasn't able to make the meeting. You can follow up with them, get them the information that came through on the meeting, and set their goal for the next meeting and the next month. So it keeps them engaged even if they have to miss a meeting or miss a couple of meetings in a row. You can still follow up with them, keep them engaged, keep them involved, and then they'll continue to be a part of your organization. Next slide, please. Because if you don't, then they'll disappear on you. Next slide. So who do you want to help? Every single person in your group is there to help each other. So your goal as the group leader is to act as the glue to kind of adhere everyone together. But it doesn't mean that you have to do all of the work. You're not supposed to do all of the work. You're not supposed to do all of the legwork. That's part of what your volunteers are there for. They're there because they want to make a difference. They want to participate. So give them things to participate in and let them help each other. Oh, and help your other group members build their own rapport. So what you want is to have members that you can reach out to and know that they have the ability to do what you do, in the sense that you're reaching out and they will reach out to different people in your group to put together, say, an editorial board meeting. A great example is I have a group member right now who's spearheading our editorial board. He reached out to, I gave him the direction to reach out to 4 other individuals who had expressed interest to me about doing this at some point in the past. And I said, hey, Max, why don't you reach out to these 4 individuals? I think you'll get good results. And sure enough, all of them said, yes, this is exactly what I want to get involved in. And now we have a great group ready to meet with the News and Observer editorial board next week. Next slide. So what can your group members do? There are all kinds of different things they can do. From the monthly action items, which are great, they're fantastic and give us a great springboard to use every month. We always need co-leaders. I know I could always use another co-leader to help me manage my group. Well, CCL Community is a great resource for us, but it requires time to go in and really learn it, and it's a great opportunity for group members to do that. We can do a treasurer is essential, especially if you're successful in fundraising, not just on the national level, but if you're successful in fundraising on the local level, you really want to have somebody who's oversees that money that can be used internally for your group. Just a side note on that, if you have a treasurer, I have 2 treasurers. Always have 2 people handle your money. I have 2 people handle the bank account that we use for the group funds themselves. And I am not a part of it as the group leader. I have no part in that, so it just keeps everybody honest and on the up and up. We always need liaisons. We need liaisons for members of Congress. We need liaisons for our senators. We need liaisons for our business leaders to reach out to the business community. We need liaisons for the Farm Bureau. We need liaisons for the editorial board. There are always different groups that we need a single individual to be the face of and to provide you, the group leader, with that information and help you coordinate across your region. Next slide, please. And yes, board members disappear. If they don't have anything to do, then why are they coming? It's the same reason we're so successful in recruiting 350 members, is that we give them actions to do. And so you never, ever want a member to ever leave your group, leave your meeting without a specific task. Next slide, please. You want to give specific tasks for each individual to do, whether it's reach out to a specific organization to see if you have an opportunity to give a presentation, or if it's to reach out to a newspaper or write an op-ed or a letter to the editor. So give individuals specific tasks. As I spoke about earlier, you want every single member to leave your meeting with a specific task for them to complete, and follow up with them halfway through the month. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It could be as simple as just writing a letter to the editor. And so follow up with your group members 2-3 weeks into the month and say, hey, Eric, were you able to get that letter to the editor in? Oh, no, I haven't done that quite yet. I'll get it done this Saturday. Well, perfect. I'd love to see a copy of it right after you submit it or before you put it in. Okay, great. All right, well, I'll look for it then. And so now you've set that goal. You set the goal at the previous meeting. You follow up halfway through, and then that gives that reminder and keeps it in the forefront of people's minds. Because it's not that your volunteers don't care. It's not that they don't want to do what you've assigned them to do. But life happens, and sometimes people forget. I know it happens to me, and it happens to my group members just the same. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I know I've talked your ear off here. We really want to make sure that we're focusing on outreach. We're hitting all the different opportunities for us to get more volunteers into our organization. We're making the time to meet one-on-one with individuals. When you have an opportunity to sit down with somebody who's interested and really talk to them and make that personal connection, that's going to vastly increase the chance that they're going to become a really valuable and engaged member. Be sure to be listening. You want to listen to what people are telling you. Don't brush people off if they say that they're Republican, or they think that this is not a cause that we should be doing, or this is a terrible idea. If they think it's a terrible idea, get them to tell you why, and maybe they've got a better solution. We're always open to new ideas, and you never know when a great idea is going to come from the most unexpected place. So put your volunteers to work right away. A board volunteer disappears. They've come to your meeting because they want something to do. Have something to do for them. And that's the best part about the one-on-one that you have before they come to their first meeting. Or you can even do it right before the first meeting so that you can learn what they are really interested in. If they really like writing, start them out in writing letters to the editor or an op-ed. Or if they really like editing letters that people want to submit to an op-ed. They really like talking to people. The next tabling event, have them on the schedule to make that happen. So make sure that I love to go in. This goes back to what Elli mentioned earlier about kind of running it as a small business. Listen to people, listen to what their strengths are, and start there. We want to broaden people's horizons and kind of push their edges, but that's once they're an established volunteer. When they first come in, you gotta start with what they're comfortable with. And then call. I like this. Hint, use your phone. It's very important to call your members. It makes that personal connection and will really help you in guaranteeing that you maintain active and engaged members. And follow up. Follow up on everything from the assignments that you've given to who you want to take over as the next liaison, to the person that you see who could be your next co-group leader. So follow up with them both at meetings, after meetings, and between meetings.